rehab, that's okay. But I abuse steroids. Steroids, what's going on in Major League Baseball? They should be legalized. I was bulimic 27 years. Silence. What? Everyone takes a step backwards. It's not contagious. You know, it's not contagious. A guy, you know, and they'll say, no, you weren't. Guys don't get bulimic. What is bulimia? Guys don't do that. So it shows you, and even now, even in social media, I'll get, you know, I have a lot of supportive emails, but I get a lot of stuff. You know, I had one guy, I thank him because I use this now, sent me a message, you were bulimic, when's your period? You know, and it's, I don't blame that. That's how a lot of people were raised. The stereotypes, the stigma, you know, of males talking about these things. You don't see it too much. I mean, look at me. Who knows when you'll see some guy went through all these things, eating disorder and body dysmorphic. Stand up here again. You know, it's something that doesn't get talked about too often. And it was a tough journey for me. It was a tough journey that started, you know, that went all the way to a near suicide attempt. Because I was so hopeless in what I saw in my reflection that it would never change, because I'd gone through all these destructive behaviors and I still saw the same thing because of the body dysmorphic disorder. And for people who don't know it, and I won't ask who knows and doesn't know, but I'll tell you, it's basically when you exaggerate small or non-existent defects in your body to the extent where it affects your ability to function in life. You don't go out. You know, you abuse drugs, you have eating disorders, you abuse steroids, and you engage in all these destructive behaviors to try to change what you see in the mirror, but it never changes. No matter what you do, it never changes. For me, it was around my stomach. I envisioned this huge stomach, no matter how thin I got, and it was like being afraid. You get obsessed with it. You get obsessed with the image in the mirror, where you're terrified of it, but you keep looking at it, and it's an obsessive compulsive thing. So how did I get to that? How did I get to the point of going through all these behaviors, seeing this huge stomach in the mirror, and wanting to kill myself? I mean, how does a guy get to that point? You have to go all the way back to before most of you were born. I was born in 1961. In a time where we had very defined gender roles, very defined, you know, fathers were coming home. My father was a World War II vet, Korean War. Mothers were in the home. You know, none of these things were talked about. And I had three brothers. I was the middle of three brothers. I guess we can call it middle child syndrome. My younger brother was a jock, nationally ranked wrestler. My older brother, some of you may know, Shark Tank at Dallas Mavericks. You knew he was going to be an entrepreneur selling newspapers and door-to-door and all kinds of stuff when he was my age. But I was the shy one. I was genetically predisposed to be the shy kid. I was shy, I was quiet. I just wanted to be accepted. I didn't know how to relate to people. I didn't know how to relate to girls. I didn't know how to relate to other, you know, to normal friendships. And I just wanted to be by myself. And so I was home a lot. And I had a very difficult relationship with my mother. My mother was fat-shamed by her mother. My mother had a very difficult relationship with her mother. So I was the one at home all the time. It runs downhill. What was it? It runs through generations. And my mother would say to me, "You're a fat pig. If you eat like that, you're going to grow into a fat pig. You're eating too much. I remember, like, you're a dumb bunny." And so these things are said to you over and over, and and I was the one at home to take the brunt. So did I tell anyone? Of course not. This is 1971, 1970. You don't talk about these things. You guys don't talk about these things. Little boys don't talk about these things. Little boys don't talk about these things to their father, who I was very close with, who I loved. Why? That's the person in the room that's sleeping next to me who tells me nothing is going to hurt me. My sense of trust that nothing can hurt me in that home. As an 11-year-old boy going through these issues, all starting with body image and now beginning into depression, being fat-shamed by your mother, you're not going to tell your father that. Because why? I was afraid I was going to get kicked out of the house. That's what your mind tells you because you don't want to lose that sense of security with the one person who is not involved in this. And of course you don't talk to your brothers about this, guys. We still don't talk about this stuff. They've read my book, but we don't talk about this. Brothers don't talk about that. So I began to get depressed. I began to eat more in depression over what was going on with my mom. I started to gain weight. By the time I was 12 years old, it was junior high in Pittsburgh where I was born and raised, here in middle school. Do they call it junior high or middle school here?
Middle school.
Middle school. And by that time, I was going to 260, 70 pounds at 11 years old. And that wasn't football big, I was big. And the bullying started at school. I started getting bullied over my weight. So now you have a shy kid who really doesn't have friends to start with, who doesn't really know how to express himself, being bullied over his weight. What happens? You isolate. Okay, you become even more depressed. I just wanted, and I just wanted to be accepted, so I started isolating in my room. All I wanted was to date a girl, to go to the prom, to be, to be like the prom queen or the prom queen, to have friends. But I had started to see myself as this just fat, stupid kid that no one would want to be with. And so you just try to fit in, you try to hang around the outside. You develop a very self-deprecating sense of humor. Yeah, Cuban, yeah, you're fat. Yeah, I'm so fat. Oh man, yeah, I need a bra. And kind of John Candy-ish, if you ever seen Stripes. Just a very self-deprecating sense of humor, which is a self-defense mechanism, which I have trouble with today with that. I have to catch myself. And it all kind of culminated when I was in junior high, walking home with the popular kids, just hanging around on the edges of the popular group. Please, even if you have to bear the insults, please just include me. Please just let me be one of you. And I was wearing these gold disco pants one day that my brother had given me. Mark had given me these shiny gold disco pants, and it was pre-disco, but it was pre-Saturday Night Fever, but I loved them. And I would wear them all the time, but they were really heavy. They were really tight on me because Mark wasn't heavy. And my stomach would hang over them, but I wore them all the time. And I took the grief, and I'm walking home with these kids, and they start making fun of them, and my self-deprecating sense of humor, and they start pulling at it. They start pulling at the pants. They start tearing them. Next thing I know, they tore my pants off me. They call it pants. Now, I was pants like you've never seen pants before. They ripped my pants off me and threw them in the street. So here now I'm a 12-year-old kid, in my tighty whities, got hanging out. I go and pick them up and I walk home. Very traumatic. It was so traumatic that I could go to that place in Pittsburgh today and show you exactly where it happened. That's how traumatic it was to me. Nowadays, those kids would be in jail. It was a physical assault. It would be on YouTube. It would be even more traumatic because it would be on YouTube, although those kids would probably be in jail, and it would have gone viral much worse than it went viral back then. In 1971, going viral meant 15 people knew about it in the lunchroom. You didn't have the internet. You didn't have all this. But you also didn't have any awareness of these issues either. There was no, I didn't know there was a word anorexia. Bulimia as a word wouldn't even come for years later. And all these things and these body image issues. So you keep it to yourself. You just keep it to yourself. You go on. You internalize it. You don't tell your parents. You have no outreach like you have today. You have no trusted person to tell these things to. You sit in your room and cry about it. And you feel shame. You feel the terrible shame and stigma that hasn't changed much, unfortunately, since then, today, for men. And as I just kept this all bottled up, what happens? It's going to be released somewhere, right? It's going to be released. Some kids might be able to get through it. Some kids are genetically and psychologically, environmentally, they can't get through it. I was one of those kids that couldn't. It's going to be released, and by the time I got to my freshman year in college, I released it. I decided that I was going to starve myself because it was the only way I thought I would ever get acceptance. It wasn't about food. It was about control. Okay? It was, what do I have control over that I will be accepted, that I will get the dates, that I won't, will not see myself as fat, ugly, and stupid, that I will get kissed by a girl. I'd never been on a date. All the things that I saw that the accepted people got, the accepted kids got. And to me, they were all good-looking, muscular, or thin. You know, in my mind, we didn't have the internet back then, but those were my images. The kids that were getting the dates, the kids that were going to the prom, the kids that were going to Dairy Queen and McDonald's after school. You know, including everyone that I wanted so badly to be included in. But I just had told myself, and my mind had started to play tricks with me, where, okay, this is what I see. I am now seeing what my mom told me I was. How can I control that? How can I get the acceptance? I'm going to start starving myself. And I remember the exact day that it happened. I remember the exact day that the switch flipped. I went to Penn State University as a freshman. I was going to a branch campus in Erie, Pennsylvania. Beautiful fall day. Everyone's moving in. Windows open in my dorm, sharing my dorm with 3 other kids. And I'm staring out, the people moving in and out, and I make eye contact with this girl. And I smile at her, and I start to sweat because she made eye contact with me, and I started to sweat because oh my goodness, this girl's making eye contact with me. She turns to her 2 friends and goes, "He's ugly. He's ugly." And it was right then, I'm like, wow, I can't let this go on. I can't be ugly anymore. I can't be stupid anymore. I can't be fat anymore. All these things my mom has said to me. What can I control? I can't control what they say. What can I control? I can control my size. I can control my food. I can control how I look. I'm going to starve myself. And fortunately, it was interesting, you were talking about the cafeterias. I was terrified of the cafeteria at Penn State. Because of that, exactly what Doug, I would not go in the cafeteria because I felt everyone was staring at me and I felt rejected the moment I walked in the door. So that made it easy for me. I would go in at lunchtime. One time, at Penn State, if you didn't go that one time at this branch campus, you didn't eat until the next time. So I went in that one time, I'd get a little salad, take it out, eat it in secret, and that was all I'd eat every day for almost a year, just a little salad. And I went from 268. Oh, I'm not triggering anyone. Yeah, I mean,
It's okay.
Am I getting too specific?
You're fine.
And I went from 268 to about 178 within the course of my freshman year. But there was the body dysmorphic disorder, this imagination of this huge stomach, and I could actually see stupidity in me. This huge stupid kid had set in. It had really started to set in, and I'm going through this anorexic behavior cycle, but nothing changed. I kept looking in the reflection in the window, in the reflection in the mirror, in my bathroom. I saw this fat kid. I said, well, it's not working. I'm still not accepted. I still feel this shame. I can't tell anyone. What am I going to do? I got to try something else. I decided that I was going to restrict, binge, and purge. And by the end of my freshman year, I had become bulimic. And that was like nothing I'd ever experienced, because every time I engaged in that behavior, for that few seconds that I was engaging in it, I felt accepted. I was no longer fat. I was going to be accepted because I did that, and that's what I needed to do. But, of course, once you go through that, the shame sets in, the guilt. And then the obsessive-compulsive cycle sets in. Got to have it again. Got to have the feeling again. And I stayed bulimic for 27 years until I was 45 years old. Just constantly looking for that feeling of acceptance, that trying to soothe that 13-year-old bullied fat child. But you never can. I never could with these destructive behaviors. And in between that, I kept on. It was a mission of searching. As I was talking, Dr. Bulick and I talked about the other day, in response to being bullied, I became a terrible bully my freshman year in college. I bullied my roommate who was like I was, heavier. I bullied him mercilessly. His name was Hawaiian Dan. We called him Hawaiian Dan because he wore these Hawaiian shirts. He was like I was. He just wanted to be accepted. He just wanted, he was quiet. And I saw me in him, and it horrified me because it made me feel ashamed. And I wanted to be accepted. How could I be accepted? I became a terrible bully. And I bullied him. I bullied Hawaiian Dan so bad that his brother came up to campus and threatened to beat the hell out of me if I didn't leave his brother alone. That's how bad I bullied him. because it was the only way I could feel accepted about myself. You know, it was the only way that I could soothe that 13-year-old boy was to bully someone else. And it took me a while to realize what it had made me. And so, you know, I never got to make it right with Hawaiian Dan. He went his way, and I went mine. But the mirror still never changed. Body dysmorphic disorder, still exaggerating the defects, still looking for that one thing so I would be accepted. You know, in my mind, I was always that 13-year-old boy in my mind wanting acceptance. Got old enough to drink, became an alcoholic. Because when I drank and got drunk and I binge drank like crazy in college, I didn't think about it. It didn't make me feel accepted, but it let me forget that I wasn't accepted. And as I moved through college, I made it through college, I got into law school, I discovered cocaine. You know, I discovered cocaine, and I discovered drugs. And the drug high for those few seconds, I felt okay. The image disappeared. So I, like the bulimia and like the drinking, I had to have it over and over and over again because I had to have that one moment. Not the moment of high, not the moment of, you know, the drug high or the drunk, the moment of acceptance. The moment of acceptance that those highs gave me. Because it made me feel normal. It made me feel normal. That's why that's where the obsessive compulsive part of it comes in. Constantly seeking, at least for me, constantly seeking that feeling of normalcy. And I engaged in all these behaviors. I moved to Dallas, and drugs, alcohol, all trying to fix it, 3 failed marriages, all because I couldn't let down the wall. I couldn't be intimate on any level because I was so ashamed of what I saw in the mirror. Finally, in 2005, it got to the point where I was so, everywhere I looked, the mirror in my bathroom, the mirror in the store mall, just constantly looking at myself at mirrors in the store malls, checking myself. People say you're vain, you know, I got people accuse me of being narcissistic. Wait a minute. Narcissists love how they look. I was horrified about how I looked, but I couldn't look away from it, like not being able to look away from the train wreck. Just constantly looking in mirrors, just with a hopeless feeling. And then finally it got so hopeless that I would never see anything different that I came very close to killing myself. I had a .45 automatic, and I'd actually practiced dry firing it. And I asked, in my mouth, and I asked a friend to get me bullets. And he was smart enough to know that something was wrong. He called my brothers, who had broken into my house with the .45 automatic on my desk, just waiting for the bullets to arrive. And that brought the first of 2 trips to a psychiatric facility. They took me down there, and I'm like, okay, in denial, and I'm down there. And as a lawyer, I knew what to say. I knew what to say to them, so they couldn't put a Britney Spears on me. So, they take me back home and back into kind of forced rehab in my house. Big deal. And nothing changed. Back out 2 months later, and I had a 2-day alcoholic blackout, drug-induced alcoholic blackout. Still binging and purging. And back to a psychiatric facility. I'm standing in that psychiatric facility. I'm standing in the parking lot. My girlfriend's crying. I had betrayed her. I'd been unfaithful to her in that 2-day blackout. She's crying. I'm standing there, and I'm thinking, okay, well, she may go, she may come or go, but you know what? I don't have one more trip to this facility. I don't have one more look into the abyss. I will be dead before I get back here again. And even we talk about our aha moment. Even worse than that, the worst thought than that is I was afraid of losing my family. My father raised me and my 2 brothers to be very close. All through our lives, stretched brothers, the bond of brothers. You hope it doesn't happen, but he'd say to us, wives may come and go, girlfriends may come and go, but when push comes to shove, all you have are your siblings. Never leave each other, always support each other, and always be there for each other. And he said this to us weekly, and I'm standing there in that parking lot thinking, I'm about to lose that. Because family may love you unconditionally, but there are limits on their willingness to see you destroy yourself. They have families. They have children. They'll distance. And I could sense that was about to happen. That was enough for me to get into therapy, to start to take that one step, to take just that one little step forward towards recovery. It doesn't have to be a big step, and that's what it didn't have to be a big step, to drop the wall of shame that I had hid from my brothers, from my father. None of these people knew anything about my eating disorders or body image issues. I hid them from everyone. Now, my brothers knew about my drug issues, obviously, because they're the ones who saved my life. But these other body image issues, just so much shame and stigma for a guy. I didn't tell any of them. Who can you tell? I didn't even know. I was 45 years old. I didn't know the word anorexia existed. At 45, this wasn't that long ago. Or bulimia. I just knew I was engaging in these behaviors that were normal to me, that I'd done all my life. This was just normal stuff to me. That was just part of surviving. So I was finally at that moment able to just take a tiny step forward and drop the wall and trust someone. And I went to my psychiatrist, who I'd been seeing for a little bit over depression, lying, not being honest with the person I'm supposed to be honest with, and finally admitted everything and said, look, I tried to kill myself. I've been bulimic for 27 years. I have these, and I hate the way I look. It's like, well, I just let it out, and there was a lot of just crying. I just let it out in this 45-minute session. And I was telling him, he goes, wow, we got a lot to figure out. And people ask me all the time, how did he not know? 2 years, seeing the guy, how did he not know? And you don't know this, when you're in the middle of an eating disorder or even drug addiction, you become an expert at hiding this. I hid it from my family. I hid it from my brothers. I can hide it from my shrink, He didn't know. And so once I did that, once I was able to let it out to him, then came, it was like the weight of my world, just this little step forward into recovery was just the weight of the world off my shoulders. It felt like I had been set free, but not completely free, because I had to go tell the one person I'd been afraid to talk to my entire life, because I was afraid he would reject me, my father. I go to my father's house. He's retired. I go over his house. And as an interesting sidelight, if you want to know how close we all are, we were all born and raised in Pittsburgh. My two brothers, my father, and I all live within a mile of each other in Dallas. So, that wasn't really just sort of karma took us along that way. So I go to his house. I said, Dad, I got to talk to you. I've had these things happen. And he really, because none of my brothers had told him anything. No, they didn't want to hurt him. I said, I tried to kill myself. I was going to kill myself. I've been addicted to drugs. And I hate myself. I've just hated myself. The way Mom and I were. I just hate the way I look, and I've hated the way I felt about myself. He said what I wanted to hear 30 years ago. He said, Brian, I love you. Come stay with me. We'll get with this. We'll get through this. I was that 13-year-old boy talking to my father. And it was, that I want something that I wanted to be able to say to him all those years ago. And that brought me to the next step of recovery. You have to forgive. I had to find... Now, forgiveness doesn't always mean reconciliation. Okay? People have had horrible things done to them. But for me, I had to find forgiveness for my mother and for these kids who had bullied me. Now, I get asked all the time, do you want these kids who pantsed you and did this to you, do you want to say anything to them? No. I don't want them to remember this. I'm not going to out them. I know all who they are. I'm not going to out them. I'd be talking to 52-year-old men, not 12-year-old kids. I want them to have happy families, to have children, and I don't want them to ever have remembered anything like that. It serves no purpose. But my mother's a different story. You have to deal with that. So I had to go to my mother, and I had to relive a lot of pain with my mother. And we got through it, and we have a great relationship now. We got through it. I had to come to an understanding that the body image issues that were inflicted on me were inflicted by her on her mother. There was nothing, life just happened. There was nothing that could be done, especially back then. There was, in the 70s, there was nothing that can be done. There was no awareness. This is how life happened. I had to let it go and let it happen again with her. Just deal with it and come to an understanding of not blaming, but understanding how it happened. And the more I talked with my mom and understand how it happened, the more I was able to let go. And the more I was able to let go, the more I was able to take another step, which was an important step, because I'm a drug addict and an alcoholic. How can you get treatment for body image issues, body dysmorphic disorder, bulimia, and address those issues when you're high and drunk all the time? You can't. So I had to get into 12-step. I got into 12-step immediately. And, you know, people that are detractors and people would say whatever you want about 12-step, but I'll say it gave me what I needed, and that it gave me the routine of sobriety, because I had to get the things that could kill me immediately under control and get a clear head so I could address all these other things. And once I was able to get sobriety under my belt and get off, and you know, from both drugs and alcohol, I was able to start really getting into the role-playing, the CBT with my psychiatrist, talking to that 13-year-old boy, bringing out that 13-year-old boy in therapy, because that's what it was all about. You know, it was all about dealing with that for me. And the more I got that, the healthier I got, the putting in positive behaviors, and I still have the thoughts. I still have thoughts, you know, I still, honestly, if I eat a full meal and I'm just not, and I'm tired and depressed, does it go through my head, hey, I could just go to the bathroom? Yes, it still does. Do I still have goofy thoughts in the mirror sometimes? Sure. I mean, I started late. You know, I started my recovery late. I don't know if, you know, I just keep pushing forward, and I don't know if I'll ever be thought-free. But every day, you know, is better. And I get asked all the time, are you cured of body dysmorphic disorder? Are you cured of the eating disorders? Well, I'm not engaging in the behavior. And I'm living a life that I never would have dreamed of when I was going through these behaviors of accomplishments and relationships and love. You know, learning how to let people in, learning how to love people, and learning how to accept love and drop that wall. To me, that's cured. Okay, I don't know if it's a clinical definition, but to me that's cured, and it's an ongoing process. And the message I want, you know, the message, my book is not, you know, it's not a how-to book. It's not about you do this and you will be okay. It's just my story. But the message is that when we talk to our children, you know, when you talk to your children, when they're going through bullying, when they're having, you know, when they're engaging in maybe eating behaviors that you're like, I don't know. When you talk to them, are you going to talk to them based on your perspective of life or their perspective of life? Because I wish somebody would have talked to me on my perspective of life. And, you know, and if somebody had talked to me on my perspective of life, I might have, you know, not gone through this for, you know, 27 years. So think about that when you talk to your kids, you know, if there's bullying going on, or your siblings or whoever, you know, and is your child like me, or is the child like me? Is the child like my older brother Mark? And, you know, well, yeah, we're gonna punch him in the nose. Or, you know, what's the mental makeup? Because we're all different. If your child's like me and you start saying, well, you know, my father taught me, and I've had this said to me, my father taught me to punch him in the nose, I'm gonna tell my kid, because that worked out fine. You know, and we do have to have acceptable ways to stand up to bullies. Absolutely, we have to learn those. Because you can't let people walk all over you and beat you up. But if you start talking to a child, at least from my perspective and the way I grew up, and they're not, and I think this was even brought up to an extent in one of the presentations. You have to talk to the child based on that level of psychological makeup. If you're taking an aggressive stance and you're pushing an aggressive stance and your child is like me, you know what's going to happen? That child's never going to tell you a thing again. Child's going to internalize it. Child's going to, you know, the child will feel ashamed that, at least from my perspective, that he was unable to deal with the behaviors in an acceptable manner. And two, doubly ashamed that he's disappointed you because you think he's failed. He's going to project that, you know, you think he or she's a failure. So, you know, remember that not all children are the same. You've got to talk to them based on whether they're gentle, you know, outgoing, and handle it that way, or it gets internalized, and these behaviors are going to come out, and it's going to let out like a blood pressure cooker somewhere down the line. And it may let out, once they left the house and it lets out, you're in a much worse position to deal with it. So it's better to, deal with it then. And how do you deal with it? There's no shame in saying, I don't know. This is something I wish that was, had awareness back in 1970. There's no shame. It's not a failure to say, I don't know. We have all these treatment resources, all this awareness that didn't exist when I was, there was no internet. There were only 3 television stations. So we have all this treatment and all this awareness that didn't exist when I was growing up. Use it. And don't consider yourself, it's not a failure. It's not a failure if a child has a problem. It's a failure if you don't put yourself in a position to allow the child to get out of it, to support. Thank you.